Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review new movies and television shows and talk about them. Today, I want to talk about a French-Canadian film called Viking. As a heads up, it's mostly in French with a few English lines here and there. The premise is a little convoluted, so you'll have to bear with me for a little bit. The Canadian Space Agency has sent a 5-man mission to Mars. When the ship nears its destination, the agency notices that the crew is having a lot of personal conflicts among themselves. So, back on Earth, they start a program to find 5 people that match the personality profiles of the 5 astronauts. They find their 5 actors and bring them together to simulate the events of the Mars mission in order to find solutions to the real astronauts' problems. The movie is about the emotional journey that the 5 actors go through in the simulation, mainly focusing on one of the actors named David, played by Steve Laplante. It's a dramatic comedy with elements of science fiction that was directed by Stéphane Lafleur and co-written by him and Eric K. Boulian. The story is a wild ride filled with twists and turns, and at no point in the movie was I ever sure where it was going. We follow David as he applies for the program and is accepted, and watch as he tries his best to take the job seriously with all the different wacky people involved and the absurdity of it all. The 5 of them act out the situations that arise aboard the actual space mission and try to come up with solutions for their problems. It leads to a number of comical scenarios that are just naturally funny. Like Gary making noise outside David's room at night to simulate noises, keeping John up on the mission, or David and Steven running into 2 cowboys who are absolutely baffled at these 2 people wearing spacesuits in the middle of the desert. We experience 2 different stories, one about the actors and one about the astronauts. We see the actors playing out the real-life events of the mission, and the film mirrors the 2 stories and blends the line between the actor and the subject. David and several other members of the mission end up getting so into all of it that the situation becomes toxic to their well-being. At times, it reminded me of the Stanford prison experiment where the participants ended up losing sight of themselves and taking actions they normally wouldn't have in order to fit in. The film explores this idea in depth while David is essentially going through a midlife crisis. The story is consistent and fascinating from start to finish and includes a lot of in-depth material that you can chew on for a long time to come. It has a lot to say about the world and how we perceive our lives, how important different aspects of it are to us, and how we change ourselves to achieve our dreams. It tells its message through visual metaphors and subtly throughout the story, and while it is filled with commentary about the world, it really feels more like a personal growth journey for David than a critique of society. David, played by Steve Laplante, makes for a fascinating case study, but as a person, he's just an average man. At the beginning of the film, he's desperate to be a part of the program and sees it as his chance to live out his dreams of being an astronaut, to do something important that matters to the rest of humanity. He throws away everything important to him and signs away all his rights. Over the course of the film, Laplante takes us through David's midlife crisis and shows us an open, honest, and yet subtle portrayal of a man losing his way. We see him lose himself in the mission and delve deep into the depths of madness only to be pulled back to reality in the end. Steve Laplante does a fantastic job with the emotions of the role and really stands out at the end when the weight of everything that's happened finally hits him. He just seemed so broken by it all. He's good at being subtly humorous, and his passion for the role shines through in his performance. The rest of the cast plays minor roles in the overall story, but each of them does a good job of their part. It mostly involves playing up the humor of the situation by exaggerating their characters' personality traits to an excessive degree and really letting the awkwardness of it all hang in the air. But everyone does it well. Production-wise, there is a lot to love about the visuals, but the soundtrack is a little repetitive and doesn't make effective use of the tracks it has in it. Visually, the entire film is smooth, with lots of interesting angles and complex shots that really draw in the viewer. It's also filled with beautiful scenic shots of Drumheller, Alberta, a crimson desert with unique properties and open starry skies. The film paints such beautiful pictures of David that make him look and feel like a tiny speck on this majestic planet. And it really gets at the idea of how David sees what he's doing as more important than himself or his prior life. There are also a lot of visual metaphors for David's thoughts, like the shots of the giant swirling red planet that get closer and more intense as the film goes on. It represents David's growing obsession with this mission and how it's taking over his life. The sets for the mission itself were a little underdeveloped, but given the situation, they made sense for the scenario. Sound-wise, the film doesn't use a lot of music, but when it does, it tends to be a somewhat annoying and repetitive type of space music. The kind that's played on a theremin and sounds like different species of flies all buzzing together with their different tones. It gives the entire film this mysterious kind of vibe, but it's definitely trying to force emotions that aren't really there, and it doesn't back the scenery well. At times, it competes with the dialogue for prominence, and in general is just kind of annoying. Overall, I think the film does a good job of presenting a good mystery with interesting characters and complex situations. It has a nice message at its core and a lot of relevant social commentary. The visuals are a mix of beautiful landscape shots of a desert and interesting and complex shots of the actors dealing with each other in this rigid space. I wasn't fond of the music and don't think it served much of a purpose, but the rest of the film is so unique in the risks it takes and the story it presents that I think I can pretty easily overlook the lackluster soundtrack. I would recommend this film to just about anyone. 8 out of 10. Remember guys, those are just my thoughts on the film, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I'll see you there later there, guy.